All right, we are live.
Thank you. Let's get started. Thank you, everybody, for attending this first Keypup workshop. So my name is Tom. I am the product lead at Keypup, which means that I am from the team responsible for the roadmap and the evolutions of the platform. And it's why I'm here today, because there are quite some interesting stuff we want to show you, and we're sure you'll be interested in. But I will be also here to answer your questions or your concerns, and of course, listen anything you would have to say. I am also joined by Arnaud.
Hello, guys. I'm Arnaud. I'm the CTO of Keypup. So I look after the technologies at Keypup, and I also work closely with Tom on product roadmap and new features.
Right. So we'll both present you some different aspects of the platform today. But before getting into that, maybe let's show you the agenda. Right, so we have loads of stuff to talk about today. First, we would like to give you a bit of context about Keypup, about what development intelligence is, and basically ensure that everybody has the same level of knowledge and comprehension of the matter. Then we'll go on the actual platform, and we'll show you how to sign up, how to set up your environment, and how to do the first step on the product. Then we'll be deep diving for a bit into the core of the solution. So we'll show you how to become more advanced user of the solution by creating new charts, new insights, to build new reportings and dashboards. And by the end of the meeting, we'll take a bit of time to answer all the questions you may have. And that being said, feel free to ask us anything during the session, of course. All right, let's get into it. First of all, and before discussing Keypup, I think we should talk about and define development intelligence. Right, I will say DI from now on to explain the development intelligence. And basically, DI takes its origins into all the practices and tools that are used by business intelligence that we applied to software development in IT context. And the core principle is to provide software development stakeholders with real-time insight that can be used to improve engineering performance, identify and address bottlenecks, and all in all, to facilitate you to take data-driven decisions. So to sum up, it helps you to take informed decisions by creating value from all your tools, your existing processes, and all the data that is either non-usable as is, because it's too complex or it's not refined, or the data that is not exposed to you directly. And so we noted some of these core principles down there. You can see that, for example, we have the capabilities to aggregate data from multiple sources, to build custom dashboards and reports, provide sharing capabilities to other users, get real-time insights. And that's only some of the principles that we use to build Keypup to ensure that it's at, I would say, the state of the art of this specific market. And of course, since we're discussing BI and DI, data is in the center of the discussion. So there's a lot we could discuss regarding how the data is fetched, enriched, used, but we'll get to that later on. And if I go to my next slide, we get back right to what I was saying. We took these principles and we tried to project them onto the software development environment. So we imagine many levers that we could activate through these good practices. So I have a few examples of use cases, and maybe you would like to monitor your software quality or software delivery to reduce the friction between teams. Maybe you would like to get the high-level overview to understand where to look or what to look for and get into the specifics to fix the bottlenecks. we may have some cases where you are a software engineer that spends too much time reporting and you want to focus on your actual priorities and developments. Or another example would be that you want to get the assessment of the workload of your teams, or the ongoing work, or the implication of each teams, so you can plan properly all the upcoming work. And for these use cases and many others that we imagined or not, we have been working on Keypup in the last past years to answer all these questions and answer all these needs. And this is the why Keypup. But if I continue, the next question to make you understand what we are doing here is the how. How do we address these matters? How do we provide such tools, such insights that will help you? What are these good practices? And the baseline here is, and the thing you need to understand is that you as a company need to be understood by the platform. So we need to understand what you've been working on, what is coming in the next few weeks, who have been working on this or that, and all the questions that will help us to build all this set of insights and dashboards. And this is the first major concept, I think, is that we connect to the solution leaders in terms of code collaboration. So you can see here that we have interfaces with GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. And with project management tools, we have a Jira, Trello, ClickUp. And we consolidate and cross all the data from these sources to create value where it did not exist. And just a spoiler for later, by doing so, we build the Keypup datasets that will be the basis to build or consult any metrics or any dashboard. So this is the basis of all of Keypup Insights. And I think on the next slide, I have a very simple process of that. Just to sum up, first, you connect your stack. So you connect your tools so you can work with as much data points as you can. And keep in mind that the more, the better, because if you have more tools connected, it means more historical data, more accuracy, a better granularity when you want to deep dive into something. And when it's done, it allows you to consult our pre-built workspaces, the one we instantiate when you connect to the platform the first times. And that will help you start immediately thanks to all kinds of insight on your company. For example, we have the Durametrics dashboard that is very DevOps focused. We may have the quality dashboard that will give you an assessment on, for example, the pull request reviews and the bugs that were raised. And we have several sets of dashboards that we will see later. And the last step is that you are able, if you want to really deep dive into the specifics. And that means customizing as you want your workspace, your dashboards. And this is not mandatory, but we had that in mind when designing Keypup. So today it's possible to customize it depending on your specific needs, thanks to the Builder engine. Right. So that's the baseline of the tool. That's the very simple understanding, and we'll jump into the platform in a second. But do we have questions before I continue? All right. So let me go on, and don't hesitate to ask me if you have anything to say. So let's try to sign up on the platform. So let's take a few minutes to do so, because it's quite interesting, the concept we go through during the onboarding. So when you get to this page, you can sign up on the platform either with your any credential with email and password, or you can use one of the compliant apps we integrate with Keypup. So in my case, I will use Keypup. So whenever you click an application, you have to grant the permissions, which I will not have to do right now, I think, because I have already done it on this test account. But giving the permissions will allow us to recover the name and the repositories of your projects and repositories, so we can import the metadata. We'll get to that in a bit. So on my first step, I have to create a team. Okay, why do I have to create a team? A team is a workspace that is shared between all the members, for example, of a company or a specific team, and that will be on Keypup sharing the same data pool. It means that if you are an admin of the platform, like I will be when I connect now, when I sign up now, I will connect applications that will be reachable by everybody that is invited to this team. And that's basically it. So let me create my team, test corporation. And the next step is to get to the actual application connection. As you can see, my GitHub is already connected since it's the application I chose during the sign up. And once again, the more application you connect, the more projects and repositories you can choose from. And you can build more comprehensive reports, for example. So for the sake of the demo, I will not connect another application, but we highly suggest you connect at least one code collaboration tool, GitHub in my case, and at least one project management tool. For example, Jira. So let's say I did connect to Jira. The next step is the direct follow-up of this step, where we look into the application you did connect, and we recover all the projects. For example, I have, it's fake data, no worries, but I have access to all my GitHub repositories. If I did connect to Jira, I could see all this workspace as well, and I can choose what I want to import. I have a few notes on that. The first note is the first time you will connect to the platform, you will enter on a free trial, which will last 14 days. This free trial gives you the highest plan of Keypup, which allows you to connect as much repositories and projects as you want. So if you want to really try the solution, it's recommended to import as much data as possible and get crazy, since you can import as much as you want. And we had a few, how to say that, a few questions regarding the code security. And what we try to explain in this small box up top is that we do not access or fetch your code. We only recover the metadata for this project. And we know that companies are very concerned about their data, and rightfully so, but this should be one less concern. We can get to that later if you want to. Right, so I did select the project I wanted to import. Whenever I click next, you're basically finished. And what is happening in the background is that we are creating your new environment. So let's wait a few seconds. And you'll see that we'll have access to a few dashboards on the side. Right, here we go. So this is the first thing you see. You have some dashboards on the left, some stuff happening in the middle, some data that is importing, as you can see on the notification here. And what happens now is that the importation of all your metadata can last from a few seconds to a few minutes, a few hours, if you are importing very large projects. So for the sake of this demo, I will not wait for my 12 projects to import. I have one environment that is already connected with all the data we need. As I was saying, this is the first view you get. Whenever you connect to the platform, the first time or the 100th time, you always get to a dashboard, whatever the first one is pinned on your navigation on the left. All right, so maybe I could give you a quick tour. and take 1 minute to go through all these dashboards. First of all, let's look at the DORA metrics dashboard. So this one is very used and quite interesting because it's based on DevOps metrics that were suggested by Google Research, that obviously will be mainly used by DevOps and IT leaders. And the goal here is to assess of software delivery performance. So that gives you a scale for you to understand how your teams compare with the market. And there's quite some fascinating things we could discuss. We actually have a white paper and some articles on our blog. Feel free to consult them, or we can deep dive into that later during the questions. We have the delivery dashboard that gives you the high-level overview of your delivery insights, like the time it takes an issue to be picked up, the amount of PRs that were merged over a period of time, the items that are overdue. And this one is obviously aimed to monitor when I say your company development capabilities, and show you where the bottlenecks may be. We can see that there is kind of a funnel that leads you to all the PRs that were not addressed yet are overdue. We have the development assistant, which is a bit specific because in opposition to other dashboards, this one's focus on specific tasks. So this could be the entry point for, let's say, engineers or software developers that also want to take value into the platform. And we think it's a good addition since the licensing model is not user-based, which means that even though a VP of engineering, for example, would be the main user of the solution, there is still room for the whole team to monitor and streamline their priorities where we have dedicated dashboards. So this one, developer-centric. We have the quality dashboard that gives you insights regarding all the bugs on a project or a team, the state of reviews, the evolution of bug raised over a period of time, quality focused. And the last one, which is called the sprint overview, that is the assessment of the state of the work on a defined period of time, and whether you work in sprint or not, of course. Right, so that's it for the dashboards, and I'm sure that there's a lot to take in, but you can request an in-depth demo if you want to, or let's get back to it later during the session if you want. Right, one last thing I want to show you that you'll be interested into as a new user is that maybe you noticed that we have different kinds of widgets that have different aspects. For example, it's because we support several kinds of visualizations. We have charts, for example, of area chart here that also come in many forms. Let me give you an example. We have line charts, we have column and bar charts, we have pie charts, you name it. We also have the KPIs. So you have example of a percentage and another KPI here that can also take a chart on the right. We have the tables or the reports that you could see, for example, on the delivery dashboard just here. And lastly, we have the cards. So cards come in two forms, actually. We have here the detail cards, as you can see, that gives you quite a lot of information regarding the title, the reference, the description of an issue or an item, but also give you access to more specific information, all the due dates, all the comments, and all the cards are clickable, so you can see exactly what the comments have been, and you can comment as well underneath, so it sends automatically to Jira or GitHub in my example. So that's the detail card. We have the summarized view, which can hold not one but several columns, as you can see here. that is only the smaller version that you can click as well to get as much information as I just was showing you. Right, so now you have the basic knowledge of a new user, and you could start using the platform right away. But we know that most companies or users have specific needs in terms of metrics, for example. So we built a solution to have several layers of customization. And basically that means you can fine-tune anything. But just before we dig into that, I think it's time to show you the magic behind the metrics and take a few minutes to discuss the datasets. Arnaud, would you like to discuss the datasets?
Yes, Tom, thank you for the detailed tour on the platform. So I will cover how all these widgets are built. And for that, it's important to go back a bit to what Tom said at the beginning about the Keypup platform. So as he presented, we interface with major data providers such as GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, Jira, ClickUp, and Trello. These providers provide various types of information. So typically GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket will provide information about pull requests, mainly, commits, issues as well for GitHub and GitLab specifically. And then we have the project management tools like Trello, Jira, ClickUp, which will provide essentially issue information. So what do we do with this data? Well, first, let's go back to the widgets that Tom presented. None of these widgets are hard-coded on the platform. They're all defined via queries in the same way that you build reports in a business intelligence tool. So we've actually applied the business intelligence principles, but to development data. So all these widgets are fully configurable, and you can actually create custom formulas, you can add filters, you can have visual representations, etc., etc. And all these representations, all these widget configurations are actually based on what we call datasets. Datasets are sources of data. These sources of data come from these data providers, GitHub, GitLab, Jira, etc. They bring data to the platform, and then using this data, you can actually start building metrics, reports, charts, etc. So what are the available datasets? Well, we have 4 datasets. If you switch back to the slide, Tom, we have 4 main datasets. The first one, and maybe the most used one, is the issue and pull request datasets. So how is the dataset populated? Well, pull requests from GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket will actually start populating these datasets as soon as you connect these applications. And also issues from Jira, Trello, and ClickUp. Now, how does it work exactly? Well, what happens is that if you look at a business tool, a business intelligence tool, usually you have to connect data sources, and then you have to deal with tables, and then you have to configure specific queries depending on where the data are coming from. With Keypup, you do not need to do that. We actually handle all the data mapping. We handle as well all the normalization of data. So when we talk about an issue and pull request dataset, it means it's a single table with all data across all your applications. That means you can do cross-application reporting on Keypup. If a concrete use case, you use GitLab for private projects and GitHub for open source projects. And you want to generate metrics or charts based on both applications, because again, open source is core to your product, so it's part of the actual product development flow. So you want to monitor engineering metrics across GitHub and GitLab. Well, with Keypup, it's a single dataset. You just query the issue and pull request dataset, and you will get data from GitHub and from GitLab indifferently. So the issue and pull request dataset is really the main one because it contains all the activity data, anything that engineers do, will usually be captured in a pull request or an issue. Pull requests and issues will be related to each other. And so it means that the issue and pull request datasets will most of the time be the core dataset that you use in your metrics. But there are some sidekick datasets that come to further enhance the issue and pull request datasets. And these are the commits from pull requests. So the commit dataset is typically useful to create reports that are very granular. Like, for example, we will cover that later, but let's say you want to analyze all the commits that are fixed commits, so related to bugs. Typically, you can go down to a very granular level, which is the commit level, to then create ratios and metrics like this one. We've got the comment dataset. The comment dataset is useful to create activity feeds. It's useful as well to detect heated discussions on pull requests or issues, and to measure activity level. And finally, we've got the reviews dataset, which is the reviews from pull request reviews on GitLab and GitHub. So this one is also particularly useful to typically measure the amount of back and forth, for example, between an engineer and the peer reviewers. Now, as I said previously, the datasets do not need to be manually configured. We populate all these datasets automatically, and it means that you, as a tech lead, as a VP of engineering, as a CTO, you can just focus on reporting on these datasets and extracting the value based on the metrics that you need to monitor. So let's say, for example, you want to understand what is the current bottleneck in your team. You can easily make a list that shows where your pull requests are per state. So Tom showed an example of boards, advancement boards. This board is fully configurable using the issue and pull request dataset, and it can show you where your bottleneck is exactly. You want to measure quality. Typically, you can take the commit dataset and start measuring how many commits are related to fixing issues, which in turn can be used to calculate a change failure rate. So all these datasets are ready to use, and there is no need to configure anything to actually retrieve data from the third-party applications, except for importing projects, which Tom showed earlier. On that note, I will let Tom show a bit how to create widgets and insights, and then I'll take the lead again to show you some of the metrics that I monitor and how I create them.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And in fact, I'll show very simple examples on how to customize all of that. Can you still see my screen? Yes, that's all good. All right, so just to rewind a bit, what I was saying is we have different depth of customization. The first, let's say, layer is to being able to move anything on the dashboard. So that's very simple. You are used to it. You can change whatever you want or resize any insight. That's classic. And this is the simple way to tweak what we have been suggesting to you. But for people that would like to create something from scratch, keep in mind that everything that you see here is actually dynamic, and all the insights there are templates. So let's say I would like to build a new dashboard. I can click the plus up top and create a blank dashboard. There you go. What can I do here? The second layer of customization is to start from something that exists. What I mean here is, like I was saying just now, everything you've been seeing is a template. So I can browse through this library, through this bank of templates, and import what I'm most interested into. For example, let's take the activity pipe and put it on my dashboard. Let me add a few things. What can we put? Okay, the bug time for changes. And let's finish with something about the PRs. Merge. Okay, perfect. My merge PRs. All right, so nothing fancy here. You can tweak your dashboard as you want. But as you can see, some of my insight templates do not give me any results, like the two on the right. And there's a very simple explanation to that. To explain you, we build all these templates to match good practices, like the naming convention, the industry standards, with very specific formulas and filters that we try to make them not restrictive. But we also know that as a company, you have all your specifics, and we have as many specifics as there are companies. For example, you do not work in sprints. You have a very specific labels for your issues and pull requests, or you want to get your metrics over a specific Git branch. And there is an infinite number of things you maybe would like to have tweaked. And this is why we introduced the Insight Builder, which is the builder engine that you can see here that allows you to do all the tweaking. So you can recognize the engine builder, the builder engine, sorry, because it has a few steps on the left. And the amount of steps may depend on the insight you are tweaking, but the logic is always somewhat the same. So let's do a walkthrough. On the first step, you can see all the datasets from Keypup. So there's the 4 datasets that Arnaud has been discussing: commits from pull requests, comments from any item, issues and PRs, and reviews from pull requests. So let's keep it the way it was before, and we can actually see all the fields that we will be able to do queries on later on. So that's all the fields from these datasets. On the second step, you can choose the type of insight you want to create. Since I was looking at the chart, I started with a chart, I can see all the different types of charts: the bar, the column, the lines, the pie chart, and the table. So I will keep the area chart as it was just before. And whenever it's selected, you can head to the Configure Table tab. So keep in mind that you can come back to any of the tabs later, or you can change here the type of chart you want to do. And this tab, the Configure Table tab, is pretty much the backbone to build insights. From there, you can actually define the queries to build your insights. Through this table, you can see down below where you have to explain or to define the dimensions and metrics you want to do. And I know that not everybody is familiar with concept of dimension and metrics. So we have this little helper on the side, but in a few words, dimensions are the attributes that define what you want to measure by. For example, you could say group or measure by. If you want to group by assignees, author, maybe you want to sort, to filter, not to filter, sorry, to group by due dates. So you can take any of the fields of the datasets to group by this specific field. And the metric, let me show you a simple version. The metric is a numeric value that is calculated by aggregating records for a given dimension. For example, we have access to a few simple aggregators, like taking the average of something, the count of something, the max, the mean, the standard deviation, the sum of something. And this is as simple as that. In this case, this template is a bit more specific, so we have a custom formula, which is not our concern right now. And The other important part on this tab, this configure table part, is the configure filter. Right, so we have all been using filters, basically nothing exotic here. It's used to drill down on the datasets. Of course, whenever you get a dataset, a very huge dataset, there is a lot of information you are not interested in because it's unrelated to the insight you're trying to build. This filtering system allows you to only get a subset of your dataset, right? So maybe I can give you an example. And I was saying everybody maybe has a naming convention that is different in between teams or in between companies. The way we did it in our case is to find the bugs in a way where we look into the labels. We want to find the labels that are called, that contain bug, either way, no matter the way it's written. Let's say it's not called bug in your company. It's called, for example, critical. You can say so in the filters, or maybe this filter does not work at all for you, and you recognize your bugs with the title of your items, of your pull request and issues. It's as simple as that. You can just choose the title and specify with regex, for example, regular expression, that you want to look into the title that contain bug / minor, for example. Another example is maybe my insight was not showing much because the other filter may be too restrictive. For example, now on the time filter, which is the assignation date, I can see that only get a few items over the last hundreds of hours. Let's set a filter that takes the whole year, for example. So assigned at current year, I can already see here that I have more records showing up top. And when I apply my filter, okay, magic, I can see that I have easily tweaked my insight to show exactly what I wanted to see. Right, so that's a simple example. I can save it, and it shows on my dashboard. And okay, good pick. I can see that my merge PRs is not working too much either. Why is that? So let me go into my configure table tab, and let's look into the filters. All right, what can I see here? As I can see there, or in the description up top, it's the PRs that were merged by me, which means that if I get rid of this filter, I will get all the PRs that were merged after a certain amount of time ago that will show into my insight. So let me take a less restrictive time window here, and let's take the year. And this is what it shows. And the way to read it is that I want to group all my PRs because I filtered on PRs by merging date, which you can see here, merge date, which compose a group by. And I want to count each occurrence, in this case, each PR merged for this specific date, inside of each group. And for example, if I want to represent weeks instead of days, and change the formatting date filter, the formatting date, and take week here, which shows immediately on my insight. Right, so this is basically it for simple tweaks. Maybe one last thing is the last tab, which is more on the cosmetics of the charts, where you can tweak the colors, the aspect of your chart, show some labels and some axes, show a legend, which makes more sense when you have more lines. But that's basically to tweak some insights. So if I save my results, here we go. I have a new working dashboard that you created yourself. And to get back to my several depths of customization, in these two examples, it was very simple. We give you a head start. You can start from a template and just tweak a few things. But in some cases, you didn't find exactly what you wanted or something you could start from. And it's why Arnaud will show you how to create and how to tweak more advanced insights. Arnaud, should I keep on presenting or would you like to show on your computer?
I will show my screen. Thanks, Tom.
I'll leave the room.
All right.
I can see.
Tom, can you tell me if my screen is big enough? Can we see?
It's all good.
Very well. Good. So Tom showed you how to customize templates. What I'm going to show you is actually how to create insights from scratch. Now, I'm going to show you a few of my personal favorites in terms of insights and KPIs. And these insights and KPIs are going to be using two data sets. The first one is going to be using commits. And then we'll see another one, which will be using issues. These insights will provide value in terms of quality and how your team is going from a development perspective. So the first insight is a rework ratio insight, which can also be, in certain contexts, used as a change failure rate metric, which is a popular DORA metric, and it will measure the amount of rework or the amount of fixing that your team is doing over time. The second insight that I will show you is a refactoring ratio KPI. This refactoring ratio KPI shows the amount of code that is deleted versus the amount of code that is added. And it is, I would say, a smoke detector to detect when your team is maybe adding too many features, too much code, and is not refactoring enough, is not removing code or reusing code enough. So again, that's the kind of KPI that you want to monitor just to smell the fire before it arrives at you. And the last insight is the feature versus bug insight that shows you the amount of bug that you are fixing compared to the amount of features that you are adding. And this one is not exactly the same as the change failure rate, the first insight. This one is more oriented towards product development, I would say. So let's get started. We'll start with the ratio KPI, the ratio insight. So I'll start from a new chart. By default, when I start a new chart, it selects the issue and pull request dataset because it's the most popular. I'll switch to commits. The visualization is fine. I'm fine with the line charts. So I'll configure the data that I'm retrieving. I'm going to sort that in a descending order because I prefer to have fresh data first. And what it is showing me at the moment is a count of commits per month. All right, well, that gives me volume activity metrics, but I think we can do something a bit more interesting than that. The first thing is, this is using the created at of the commit. I prefer to have the created at of the parent pull request. So I'm going to change that to use the pull request created at rather than the commit date. Then I'm not interested into pull requests which are currently open. What I would like to do is look at commits that have been merged into master, because commits that have been merged into master or main are the commits that usually have made it to production. So that's what I want to look at. I'm going to add a filter which says parent pull request. The state of the parent pull request is equal to merged. All right. Now I'm looking at a count of commits per month, which have been merged to master. All right. Now I want to create a ratio that shows me the amount of commits that were related to fixing bugs. What I'm going to do to start with is add a metric. So on a chart, you can have multiple metrics. Here, I've added another count. It's exactly the same metric. It's absolutely not useful. So I'm going to create a custom formula, and I'm going to count the commits which are fixing things. So I'm going to use a countif. Let me expand this formula. I'm going to use a countif and a reject expression on the message of the commits. I'm going to say I want to count all the commits which includes the keyword fix. Just to be specific, this is case insensitive. So if your developers use fix or fix with a capital F, then they will be both taken into account. All right. It's great. I'm saving this. Now I've got two lines. I'm going to change the color so we can see up on the charts. I've got a count of commits, and among this commit, I've got the count of commits which are related to a fix. Now, that's not exactly what I want. What I want is a ratio. So I don't want to have two separate metrics. I want to have a ratio of fix versus total count. So I'm going to expand on that formula, and I'm going to divide the countif by the count of commits. And now I'm getting a ratio with a lot of numbers. So I want something in percentage. So I'm going to multiply that by 100, and I'm going to round it to, let's say, 2 numbers. And I'm now getting a percentage. Here, in September, we had 4% of commits which were related to a fix. This count here is not useful anymore, so I'm going to remove it. And I'm now getting a clean chart with my ratio of fixed commits versus the total number of commits. And this is a percentage. So let's clean up that chart. I'm going to name it work ratio. I'm going to explain what it is doing. Work ratio shows how much fixed commits are merged versus regular commits. I'm going to name my metric. I'm just going to call it ratio. And the reason why naming the metric here is important is because in the label, when you have multiple series, it shows you the right naming here. So I've got a ratio. And here I'm just going to say as well, I'm going to name my Y label, my Y-axis label, and I'm going to say ratio, and it's in percentage. I'm going to show that, and we are done. Now, this rework ratio is showing a lot of historical data. You can see that it's going back to 2020. I don't think I need that much data in my charts. I want to focus on the current year. So let's do that. I'm going to edit that insight. I'm going to go back to the configure table section, and I'm going to add a filter and going to specify that I want the pull requests created at to be within the current year. So I'm just using current year here. And now we're seeing a more focused version. of the rework ratio chart. And now what does this ratio is telling me? It's telling me that overall, we are doing less and less commits, focusing on fixing bugs. So let's go back to what commits are doing. If I've got a commit that says fix something, it's probably because a month ago or 2 weeks ago, we introduced a bug. So this somehow expresses a level of rework. And that's why you may call it change failure rate, because if a fixed commit goes into master and into production, it means that you've corrected a failure. And this here shows that we are going in the right direction. And that's why this metric is monitored by top companies like Netflix and Amazon, because it shows you how much care you're bringing to the features that you're shipping, how much testing, should it be automated or manual, how much review you're doing. And if your rework ratio or change failure rate ratio is going down, it means that the features you are delivering are getting more robust. Of course, this insight relies on engineers using the right keywords in their commits. But again, because we're using rejects on commit messages, if, for example, they use sometimes defect instead of fix or some other keywords, you can actually include that in Keypup and compensate for the lack of convention in your team and still have accurate metrics. All right, that's for the rework ratio. Now, we'll do something very similar for the refactoring ratio. So that's a KPI I monitor to make sure that my team is not adding too much code and is having a good refactoring flow, meaning they're reusing code, they are deleting code. I mean, it's like normal house cleaning. So what I'm doing is I usually have a KPI that monitors the ratio between the number of lines deleted and the number of lines added. And I monitor that for the current year. So let's start with a new simple KPI. So the KPI with Sparkline is great when you need to measure historical values. In this case, I want to focus on a pure metric. So I'm just going to focus on one metric. I'm going to select again the commit dataset. I want to get granular. And this one is actually very simple. I do not need to group by created at. I'm just going to remove that dimension. I just want a count. Now that's giving me a very big count because I have absolutely no filters. So again, I'm going to add filters. I'm going to say that I want to look at merged pull requests. So I'm going to say pull request state equaled merge. And I'm going to say pull request created at is for the current year. So again, it's the same filters as what we used for the previous insights. All right. We're having 3,700 commits. And now what we want to do we're going to sum the number of deletions divided by the sum of additions. And we are pretty much done. I'm going to name it refactoring ratio. Here, I'm going to just explain that it's a ratio of code lines deleted versus code lines added. And I'm going to save that. Why is this refactoring ratio useful? So it's not an absolute metric. It's not something that tells you your team is doing it right or wrong. It's a ratio that helps you detect a potential problem. So typically, if I see that ratio going down, plunging towards 0, it probably means that we're adding a lot of code and we are not spending enough time reusing the existing code or refactoring. So typically, if I see that refactoring ratio plunging towards 0, I will start to investigate to understand if my engineers need a bit more training on the existing code base, if we're doing proper design work to reuse the existing features. I mean, I will try to understand what is happening without automatically thinking that there is a problem. I just want to understand why we're adding so many lines of code compared to the number of lines we're removing. Sometimes, of course, it's justified. Sometimes there is no issue. But usually, a good refactoring ratio will be between 1 and 0.5 because you keep adding feature. If your product is really mature and you're just consolidating it, then usually we'll get a refactoring ratio which is above 1. But if you're still delivering actively a lot of features, then your refactoring ratio will usually be below 1 because you're adding features. All right. Now, the last insight that I want to show you is feature versus bug insights. So at Keypup, typically we value a lot anything that has to do with bug fixing. We want our UI, our engine to be absolutely clean. So I want to ensure that whenever we add feature, we actually have a good bug fixing flow. So that's why I always measure the amount of bug fixed versus the number of features we are adding, because if we are not fixing enough bugs and we're adding too many features, then we take the risk of having an unstable product. And that's not something that we desire. So that's why I always try to balance the amount of bug fixed versus the number of features that we ship. How do I measure that? Well, I've got a column chart which shows me the relative focus between bugs and features. So let's switch to a column chart here. We're going to use the issues and pull requests. And here, I want this chart to be based off mostly Jira issues. We use Jira internally for tracking purpose. And so I want this metric to be product-oriented. How many bugs are we fixing versus features from a product development perspective? Which then, if the amount of bug fixed is not enough, I can go to Tom and say, hey, we need to prioritize bug fixing a bit more. So let's do that. So first, we'll focus on the current year, as usual. So we are going to say that the created at, again, here, we're not looking at commits, we're looking at issues. We're going to say that the created at is for the current year. We're going as well to add a little filter, which says that the state is closed, because we want to look at closed issues, so issues which have been implemented. So here, and finally, we want to look at issues only. We do not want to look at pull requests. Here we are, issues, here. All right, we're looking at closed issues for the current year. All right, perfect. Now, the calculations are going to be a bit similar to what we did in the rework ratio. We're going to use custom formulas with an if statement to calculate the number of issues which are related to bugs and the number of issues which are related to features. I'm going to start with the amount of issues which are related to bugs. Right. I'm going to do a countif. We've seen that function previously. And I'm going to use the labels. So I'm going to say if the label names contain, I'm actually going to use a list. Bug or bug. So why does it matter? Phasing. In Jira, we've got an issue type, which is called bug with a capital B. And in GitHub, we tend to use lowercase. So we have bug here. So I'm doing a countif. And that's going to give me a count of all issues which are related to bugs. Here, I'm going to change the color to be more of a reddish. Now I'm going to copy paste that. And I'm going to add another metric. And for this other metric, I'm going to do the contrary. I'm going to say I want a countif of any issue which does not contain the label bug. Oh, we're going to put another color. And here we are. You have here a chart, a column chart, showing you a comparison of how many bugs you've been fixing compared to the number of issues which are not bugs, so features or tasks. And it gives you a proportion of how much your efforts have been dedicated to the number of bugs. We're going to finish this chart. Feature. I'm going to specify that this is a product metric. Here, I'm just going to specify what this chart is about, and I'm going to save it. I'm going to rearrange my dashboards. I'm going to put this here. All right, and let's talk now a bit about this bug versus feature chart. So it gives me a proportion. Now, you're going to tell me, well, if you have no bugs to fix, then obviously you're not going to fix bugs. So this metric is interesting to show you how much priority you've put on bug fixing, but you have to take it from the perspective of how many bugs you have in the backlog. If you have 0 bugs in the backlog, it's absolutely normal that you are not fixing bugs. So that's why these kind of metrics, they usually have to be considered in the context of other metrics. And this other metric would typically be the number of bugs that you have in the backlog over time, or the number of bugs created per month. So I'm saying that because usually one metric is not enough. One metric is not going to show you everything. And that's why with Keypup, we try to make the creation of metrics really simple, because we want people to be able to create a set of metrics, to be able to control and cross the different data points that make up their engineering flow. Because again, one metric is not enough. You will always need a combination of metrics to understand a potential problem or something that is going really well. So again, it's like looking at your engineering flow from different angles. And that's why you want a toolbox with a various set of metrics that are fit to your specific development flow. And you don't want to just focus on, for example, the lines of code you've developed this year. So that was a quick run through some of my favorite metrics. If you have any question, of course, I'll be taking some. No question? Good. That means that was really clear. All right. I'll hand over to you then.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. All right. Can you see my screen?
It's loading, yep.
Okay, I have nothing much more to show, but just to show you that what we've been through We discussed a bit about what is Keypup and what is development intelligence. We saw how to record, not to record, to log in or to sign up on the platform. We learned about the datasets, what are datasets, dashboards, insights, and we now know how to create insights. So we know that was a lot, maybe for some of you, but we wanted to do this quite a 360 presentation of the tool, so now you can have a head start if you want to start using the platform right away. But what I suggest now is if any of you have any questions or suggestion or anything to discuss, now is a good time about anything we discussed or not. And if they're not, Arnaud, it means that we have been brilliant.
I just want to take maybe that opportunity to say that today was, of course, an overview of Keypup. But as I mentioned, each engineering team has different needs. If you want to book a demo with us, of course, please do so, because during this kind of demos, we actually take into account your specific needs, so the kind of metrics that you want to see, but also how to calculate them. And that's usually a big part of the discussion. It's like, how, in your context, do you calculate your success metrics or your problem metrics? And usually what we do is we use then demo data, and we put these metrics together. And of course, once you have signed up to Keypup, we can actually share these metrics that we built together. We can share them with you, and you can get started immediately.
That's right. So feel free to book a 30-minute or 1-hour demo from our website or for the platform. Any question?
I have one question, please.
Sure.
I saw you show the last insight that you shared. I wonder if it's possible also to report on backlog information.
Yes. So that's a very good question. It's totally doable. You may have noticed that in my last insight, I focused on closed issues. You can actually focus on open issues. And as soon as you start doing reports on open issues, for example, give me the list of issues which have the label bug, which are currently in a state that is open. That report here, or that KPI or chart, will actually give you an estimation of your current backlog. And then you can start refining that backlog. So for example, you can refine your filters on specific labels like bug, open, and critical. So you can actually play on labels to further refine your backlog. And then if you really feel motivated, you can actually go really deep into backlog exploration by using rechecks on the actual description of the issue. So you can actually look for specific keywords inside the description of the issue and derive some metrics on your backlog. So Keypup for that is a great tool because it allows you to, again, look at your backlog from different angles and slice your backlog based using attribute filtering, pretty much. Does that answer your question?
Yes, completely. Thank you. I have another question, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Are you automatically linking pull request to issues in the ticketing system?
Yes, we are. So typically, it's used in two different ways. On issues and pull requests, you can get an indication. Again, I'm talking about filters here and metrics you can report. So on issue, there is a field that we call implementation status. And for that field, we actually look at pull requests resolving that issue. Without going into too much details, the way we associate pull requests to issues is using auto-closing keywords, which are basically a reference to the issue in the pull request. And we automatically associate those. And that allows you to typically filter issues based on the current implementation status of an issue. The other way that we use that association is in the card widget. In the card widget, when you list, for example, pull requests, you'll get as well listed under it the list of associated issues. And the same way, the other way around. So when you list issues, you'll get the list of associated pull requests. So that's the second way we leverage that association. And there is a last way we use the association between issues and pull requests. It's for due dates. So usually people will set due dates, should it be a sprint due date or an issue-specific due date, they will do it on issues, usually not on pull requests. But if you want to understand how many pull requests are critical, then it would be nice to actually infer the due date of a pull request based on its related issues. And that's exactly what we do. When a pull request is related to a set of issues, one or several issues, we actually get the soonest due date, and we attach that as the pull request due date, which allows you to typically create reports of which are the pull requests that are currently in review and overdue. So that's, again, another way we provide value through that association between pull requests and issues.
Thank you.
I think there was a question on the chat. What is the difference between pull request and commit request? So the difference between a pull request and a commit is that a pull request will actually have several commits. A commit can be seen as the most granular unit of work. It means that when an engineer will work, they will usually work in small batches. So they will modify a few lines of code, then create a commit, push that commit on the pull request. So the pull request will have a kind of history of commits, which describes the steps that the engineer has taken on that pull request. So it's like the history of that pull request, and it's the granular unit of work of that pull request. Sometimes you want to do reporting on which, let's say, feature-based reporting. So you want to look at pull requests because the pull request describe a body of work. So it's convenient because you can get reporting on specific features or bug fixing sessions, etc. So it's a body of it's a group of commits, and it describes the body of work. So when you need aggregated reporting related to feature development or bug fixing, then it's better to actually report based on pull requests. Now, if you really want granular reporting, let's say understand exactly from a work perspective what has been done, then you want to report on commit. And typically, that's what I've done for the rework ratio. I was looking at on commits because sometimes a feature pull request will also include some small fixes. And I want to know that. So I want to look at the commit level to understand exactly which steps were related to bug fixing. I think we're getting more questions on the chat. I see plenty of definitions of DORA metrics. How do you guys calculate MTTR and why? That's a very, very interesting question. Tom, you want to answer this one?
All right. Yeah, and yes, indeed. Céline, thank you for your question. We have plenty of definition of MTTR. And actually, when we get back to the basics, it's the time that is spent to resolve an incident. So the way we do it at Keypup on our template insights is that we want to take a look at the time an incident was created. And today we do so by looking at issues or pull requests that are labeled incidents. And we do the calculation between the time it was created, so the issue, for example, was opened, and the time it was closed. And this lapse of time will give you the time it needs in average for your teams to handle an incident.
Okay, I think there was another related question, Tom. What is mean time to recovery? So to explain that, when your website is down, that's what we call an incident. So it means that somehow something is going wrong in your platform. There is a bug somewhere, or maybe your database crashed, etc. What it means is that your service is not available to your customers. So from that point onward, the clock is ticking. You have to resolve this incident as quickly as possible. And you enter from this point onward into a recovery process. You want to put your website back online. And that's one of the DORA metrics, this measurement, how long it takes for you to put your service back online. It's one of the key DORA metrics because it measures the ability of your team, your ops team usually, but also your approval chain, engineering team. It measures your reactivity, how long it takes to recover from an incident. So that's what we call mean time to recovery. And you want this metric to be relatively low, less than an hour typically. I must specify that this metric, the mean time to recovery, we tend to recommend to measure only the manual or human-based recovery. Typically, recoveries that come from self-healing mechanism, like for example, you have an infrastructure that is based on containers like Docker, and some of your containers crash and then recover automatically. We recommend not including these recoveries in your mean time to recovery because they will artificially decrease your mean time to recovery. So you only want to measure the human-based recoveries, just to measure the efficiency of your team to recover from a big incident.
I can see another question, which is, don't you think your development assistant dashboard is somehow facilitating micromanagement? Right, so my short answer to that is, we don't think so. And the simple answer is, today, the development assistant is focused on your specific tasks. The goal is not to filter on someone else. It's to see exactly what tasks are assigned to you, what you are working on, what are your due dates that are applied to yourself. Of course, there could be any specific customization done by the users to go deeper and further and do something else from these templates. But as of now, it's not focused on someone else but yourself.
Let me maybe answer from a CTO perspective.
Mm-hmm.
When an engineer in your team is not a good fit, there is no need for metrics to know about it. You will know about it just by looking and hearing people. So metrics are not for that purpose because you don't need metrics for that. The metrics are to measure the efficiency of your organization as a team. How can we make things better? The objective is not to point fingers because that's absolutely useless. And when you look at top companies like Netflix and Amazon, that's not the culture they have developed. The culture they have developed is we should be able to fail without assuming the consequences, meaning that we should be able to trial things and still have a backup. What does it mean? It means that if your organization finds itself introducing bugs on a regular basis, are you going to finger point your engineers? No, that's absolutely useless because it's not going to do anything. If you're putting stress on your engineers, they're not going to deliver better. They're just going to be stressed. However, what you may want to do as a CTO, as a VP of engineering, is start introducing more layers of testing. So maybe introduce automated end-to-end testing, which is usually a difficult part. Maybe more manual testing. You want to have test scripts. So you want to focus on the quality parts. And that's a team effort because you will need people to work on the testing itself, but you will also need the engineers to explain the business logic to the testers and the people putting the end-to-end testing. So that's an example of a scenario where you've got two options. You can use metrics the wrong way and do finger pointing, and that's not going to yield any positive results. Or you can actually use metrics to say, okay, we need to do something, and we're going to monitor it, and we're going to do that as a team. So it's very important to understand that metrics are not there to monitor individual people, because usually you won't need metrics to monitor individual people. And you want to create a virtuous culture as a team. And that's what the metrics are for.
I think we have another questions regarding
how do you exclude automated recovery from reporting? So typically, if you are using Jira, Trello, or ClickUp and are capturing incidents in these systems, they're usually related to manual incidents. So by nature, automated recovery will not be taken into account. So by default, you'll be safe using Keypup.
And we're catching what the users have been creating, basically.
Exactly.
When an issue is created with a specific label that reports to an incident, this is what we will be catching, and not from some other microstutter services that will give us very specific timings of incidents.
And I take this opportunity as well to say that company culture is very important on that. When it comes to raising incidents and raising bugs, you do not want people to be afraid of raising incidents and raising bugs. You want people to be honest. When they see a bug, they report it without fearing to be shot as the messenger. When they report incidents, same thing. You don't want them to cheat. You don't want them to raise the incident half an hour after it occurred. So that's why it's important to not do individual monitoring, because it creates that kind of stress culture, and people become kind of dishonest in terms of what they report, and they start hiding things. You actually want people to be transparent, and you want to communicate the fact that it's a team effort. So you see a bug, you report it. That's normal. You see an incident, you start the clock immediately as you notice an incident. And that way, you step by step, you actually get more accurate metrics. You're getting more honest metrics, and then you can start improving because you've got a real picture of your team, your product, and your service.
Right. That was a good batch of questions. Anything else? Yeah. Any questions, ID, suggestion? Look, Arnaud, I think we're good.
I think we are. All right.
All right. So thank you for your attention. Hopefully that was beneficial to you. It was surely for us. We will be sending you the records of the session and the slides that I've been presenting, in which you'll find some useful resources. Like at the last slide, you'll see a few links. Feel free to consult them. There is a lot of interesting insight into them. And thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see you on the platform on Keypup quite soon.
And don't hesitate to book a demo.
Right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.